80s and 90s action films. 80s and 90s, and I say that with a grain of salt. I take it with a grain of salt because my list, I don't know about what you guys are, but my list is not like the best of the action films. It's just the action films that like I felt fit the vibe of that 80s and 90s. You know what I mean? Like, and I try to do something. I try to go like I'm going to do one of all my favorite action stars of that genre, but it kind of didn't. so I'm going to make my own rules as I go along. But like, I'm not going to say the best movies of that genre is basically what I'm saying. I'm not going to put Terminator 2 in there because that's probably the best movie, best action movie. And I don't want to jump on you guys if you did put that in your list. But I'm just saying that's not what mine's going to be. It's going to be the ones that influence me. It's going to be the ones that solidified that genre for me. And I want to say that I'm going to throw this out here. I'm not going to say it. But at one point, I bet I know at least one of Clint's. So,
well, with
I
that,
I'm
I will
honestly
take that cue to explain how I created my list. And so,
there you go. Go for it.
I did not do a force rank. This is not like a, best of or anything of that nature. These are just 5 action films in the 80s and 90s that I feel impacted me, impacted the way I grew up, impacted my movie watching, things of that nature. And probably set me up to be on podcasts like this, Chad. So, so that's kind of how I took this approach. Kale, how about yourself?
I wish I could go back to your VHS set down in your basement and look through that, because I could probably just be like, oh, it's gonna be that one. It's gonna be that one. It's gonna be that one.
Yeah, which one has the paper case worn off, right, from taking it in and out?
Exactly.
But no, it's good. We didn't necessarily plan exactly how this was going to go, and I think sort of similar to you guys, what I did is I went, what are the most pure 80s and 90s action movies that I could come up with that I loved, right? So I threw out the espionage movies, right? So no Mission Impossible, no James Bond movies. I threw out the disaster films, which I love, right? So, The Core, Dante's Peak, Twister. I mean, those are some great movies, but I threw out kind of those disaster film movies. And then finally, I removed sort of the sports films. So, right, Rocky IV was very influential in my upbringing. I had the high top, haircut as a little blonde, tall kid running around, but I threw out the sports movies, right? I went pure action films, of the 80s and 90s. And so similar to Clint, I didn't rank order them or anything, but these are what I felt, these are the most hardcore, pure action movies that I could come up with. So that's how I did my list.
Yeah. This excites me, though, that I feel like we all took a little bit different approach, which means I would assume our movies are going to be, very different. So it's going to be interesting to get into this.
Yeah, I hope you're right, because that was one of my concerns is when we were talking about this. I worry that Clint and I were born, Clint's much older than I am. By a month. Yeah. So I worried that Clint and I would have a lot of overlap, and I don't know if that's going to be true or not. I honestly have no clue. But I wonder if Kale's list is going to be skewed differently than ours, because I noticed a pattern in mine as I was going through. So I don't know if Kale's going to, I don't know if you're going to, but like, I'm really excited just to see what these lists consist of. Do we let the guests start here first, Clint?
Yeah, no,
Kale
absolutely.
Kale says he wants it. He wants the ball.
Yeah.
Give Kale the ball.
And I think in this sense, like, just lay it out however you want to start out. Yeah. So whatever movie you want to throw, that's what we're going to start with.
I'd like to throw one out, and it makes sense, and here's why. We just reviewed, in the last episode, the new Roadhouse.
Yep.
You would be remiss if you don't have the original Roadhouse in your list of best 80s and 90s action movies. You've got Dalton, the good-looking hero, fantastic, bar cooler, bouncer. You've got the evil Brad Wesley trying to take over the town, strong arm all the local businesses. You have the beautiful local doctor, smart as she is beautiful. You have a monster truck running over and through, stuff. You have a stuffed polar bear near fatality by falling on a guy. To me, Roadhouse typifies everything you want in an action movie. The fight scenes are fantastic. You don't have to watch it too closely. There's enough character development that you care about the people in the movie. But I thought it was good, and I'm glad you guys threw me the ball first here, because I'd like to get that one kind of crossed off our list, because we just talked about the new one, which, again, I think we agree the original is better. And so to me, you got to have it on your list. So Roadhouse is the first one I'm going to put out there for the group.
I feel like you missed two key points of two of my favorite things about the original. Yeah. I mean, like that scene alone was absolutely amazing. I remember watching that.
Is the second one is the second one the boot?
No, the second one is a character that he didn't mention, which is Sam Elliott. I thought was one of my favorite characters in that movie, and it's like that was just, man, when he gets stabbed, like you're just like, that's like as close to crying in that movie as you're gonna get right there, you know?
Well,
brutal.
And he made it so cool, like because he had that like salt and pepper hair, right? You know, and Kale and I watched this movie again real recently, and we're watching it. It's like that's Sam Elliott, and like I don't remember what year this movie came out, but 1989. It came out in 1989, and he was an old guy then. You know, he's salt and pepper then, and he's just got that cool like running his fingers through his hair constantly, and it's like Sam Elliott's cool, man. Again, the pageantry, Sam Elliott's cool. I agree.
He looks exactly the same. Still today.
Yes, exactly.
Still exactly the same.
And, you know, to me, one of my favorite scenes, which is probably an odd favorite scene, is kind of the first night of Dalton coming to the Double Deuce. And after, you know, he just observes, right? He's just sitting there drinking his, leaded or unleaded. He's just drinking coffee. And then the next day, you know, he's empowered to say, hey, what Dalton says goes, right? And so, you know, Dalton has observed all of these things. You know, this guy's skimming out of off the top, off the register. She's, you know, we sell booze here, not drugs, and kick out one of the waitresses. You know, this guy likes to fight, right? That's not the temperament you want with the bouncer.
Yep.
And so, to me, that's like an awesome scene, because you realize, wait a minute, it isn't, hey, who's the strongest, most beefed up guy? It's, this guy knows what he's doing, and you're kind of like, dang, takes some guts to come in and really clean house and clean things up, and hey, maybe the Double Deuce is going to turn around here. So I love that scene for this movie.
The other thing too, a fun little fact is and I'd have to look up his name because I can't remember, but
Jeff Healey.
The blind guy is actually like a legit musician as well.
Yeah, Jeff Healey is one of the like all-time blues singers. So that's what, you know, like Kale, when we watch this, Kayla's like, I feel like he's like a real guy. Like I'm like, he is. He's a legitimate blues singer. Like he's great, and yeah, he's fantastic. So I'm glad that we finally got around to mentioning him, because we should have mentioned it when we're talking about the new Roadhouse. But yeah, exactly. Yeah, he deserves that. He deserves that.
So we don't need to belabor, you know, the original. I really wanted to throw that out there, since we just got done talking about the new one. That made my list.
I do think that you guys are missing out on the knife in the boot. Like I felt like that was one of the coolest things for
that was definitely a cool scene.
Yeah, he's like, when he walks in, he's like immediately, because Dalton knows, like he sees everything. Like Kale said, he sees everything. He's like left boot or right boot or whatever it is. He walks in and immediately notices the guy's got this little knife sticking out of the tip of his boot. God, you're right, Kale. That's a great movie. Great movie. That fits the vibe for sure.
Okay, so my oldest, which is also going to be my favorite in this entire lineup, and this is a movie that I used to watch countless times. And I mean, it's got a good cheese factor. It's got everything that I want, and it's also my absolute favorite action star of all time, hands down, which that is 1988's Bloodsport. Jean-Claude Van Damme was literally like my childhood idol. I know everybody else was like Chuck Norris and Stallone and all these. Jean-Claude Van Damme is, I can watch every one of his terrible movies and absolutely love every one of them. But Bloodsport, it was one of those like that. I think the reason why I liked it, I loved his character, like a very calm, collected, He was a professional at what he did. He cared about like other people. I loved the man, I'm going to struggle with character names, but yeah, but the American guy, right, is like, I loved like the friendship and the bond that they had. And then you had that just great big dude that was the bad guy that was just awesome.
So I have what I'm going to say is the most non-controversial take with respect to Jean-Claude Van Damme. No one who's a male has made the splits cooler than Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Hands down.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. All right, so that will lead perfectly into my number 5 here. So my number 5. So I went in order of number from 5 to 1 as far as my favorites of this genre. And number 5 for me, I doubt it's going to be on anybody's list. It's Double Impact. Okay, do you guys remember this one at all?
Yeah, that's 2 Jean-Claude Van Dammes.
Yes. So it's 2 Jean-Claude Van Dammes, and I just recently watched this one, and it basically, like, I was looking for some of like the failures in the green screens and stuff, but it actually looks pretty good. Like, you'd never notice it for a film that was recorded in 1991. It looked really good. But the reason I say this is because the movie starts off with a big action scene where Jean-Claude Van Damme and Jean-Claude Van Damme, the baby versions, are being swept off to different places on Earth. And I honestly, for my whole life, I thought that it was Gene Hackman that played like the uncle or whoever it was, Frank, but he's not. It's somebody named Jeffrey Lewis, and he's not in a ton of movies, but he looks a lot like Gene Hackman, like the Timu version of Gene Hackman, if you will.
Was that movie like, were they in like a sweatshop or something where they were like making, was it teddy bears or something like that? Is that am I thinking of the...
Kale, you got any clue on this one? Because I don't know which one you're talking about. It's not this one.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm probably thinking of Sudden Death or Hard Target again.
Yeah. So this is one where it's a couple, it's babies basically, and they're being raised by some sort of Australian diplomat, and they've got their own personal bodyguard, who is this guy named Frank Avery, Jeffrey Lewis, the Timu version of Gene Hackman. And anyway, they give him the night off, and these guys come in and basically, I don't remember what the plot was really, other than the fact that they killed their parents. They have the Batman thing going on here, right? Kale,
well,
I see.
Yeah, so they split up the 2 twins, and one goes and lives in, I think, Los Angeles. The other one is raised somewhere, I think, in Asia.
Yeah, so when this happens, I think they're in Hong Kong. So one of them is like in a Hong Kong orphanage, basically. He grows up in an orphanage, and the other one, it grows up in France, but they call him Mr. California, repeatedly. But so he grows up, and basically when they first cut to like the adult version of Jean-Claude Van Damme in this one, it's him in his, like, he's teaching a dance class. All right. So he's in like these Speedos and all this, and he's got all these women in there with him. And, and again, all right, I haven't even mentioned this part, but like the reason that I love this movie is because, again, I role played with these when I was a kid. All right. So the 2 characters are Chad and Alex. So my cousin Andy and I, it was, we're going on my grandma Barb's house and we're playing these roles. Chad was like the mama's boy type of like well-dressed guy who grew up in California. And then Alex was the one that was like the rough and tumble, grew up on the streets type of guy, whatever. Had his hair slicked back and wore leather jackets, whereas Chad was like anyway. So I told Kayla this leading up to it, and she wasn't really watching it, but the opening scene where the first Jean-Claude Van Damme, Chad, comes in, and he's teaching this dance class, and all these women are oogling and oohing and on over him, and he does the splits. Kayla immediately, she leans over to me, she's like, "You can't do the splits." Like, so it's like, but anyway, again, the pageantry, there was nothing cooler than that. And you want, like, we've all tried it, right? We've all tried it to do the splits like Jean-Claude Van Damme did. And this movie fits all those tropes that we talk about. where you have the everything explodes. There's the typical you're gonna fight, your whatever your parents are get killed or whatever, and all of a sudden now you got to fight. You're gonna fight each other. You got to fight the good guy in this one, and then you got to go fight the bad guys, and you got to have a bunch of action scenes, and it's just perfect. And again, it was such a big part of my life because at what was I say, 9 years old? No, 8 years old. 8 years old to have a Jean-Claude Van Damme character named Chad. And I don't know if it's just me or not, but I'm going off on a tangent about this one, but I feel like they use their names so much. Like whenever Chad does something stupid, it's like you hear just the other Jean-Claude, Alex. It's like, Chad, just randomly all the times, they're constantly yelling their names back and forth to like reiterate which one is which or something like that. So to hear my name on the big screen at 8 years old was a big deal for me, especially when it's Jean-Claude Van Damme. So number 5 for me, Double Impact. That was a passionate speech about a really bad movie, but I loved it.
So I had to look this up, and it looks like the movie I was thinking of was Knockoff with Jean-Claude Van Damme, and that was a whopping 4.8 out of 10. So
yeah, it was Knockoff. That was probably, I'm going to say, let me guess the year on this one, 1997.
98. Yeah, you're close.
Oh, yeah. That's
wow.
one of those later ones where he came in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had like if my list is of 5, I had an outside looking in of Hard Target, which is Jean-Claude Van Damme playing a former special ops. Now he's, living on the street, and it's basically, the most dangerous game to kill it. They hunt humans and stuff. But
I forgot about that. That's what that movie's about, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. They put flyers out and they try to find former, homeless.
Is that the one where they had like the heads in the jar when they got to like the one cabin and he finally breaks in and like there's all the heads out in the jars
the trophies, right? They put a belt around these guys and they say, okay, if you can make it across town, you're free and you get the money. And these guys, super rich, are paying $100,000 to come take part in the most dangerous game, right? Hunting humans who have some training but have no other family. But that, to me, if I was to put a Jean-Claude Van Damme in, I love Bloodsport. I'm totally with you on that one, Clint. But I was thinking Hard Target if I were to.
So I want to mention 2 things here. First off, is Hard Target, is that the one where you have with the snake? The punch snake? That's not.
I don't think so.
Is that the one where he drives the?
It is in the bayou though.
Yeah, I think that's the one. Then if it's in the bayou, that's the one because he's got the mullet and he drives like a '90s Camaro there. And the second thing I want to say is that if this is all true, did Kale just allude to the fact that he did not have a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie on his list?
That's correct.
I think so.
Oh, I'm gonna have to flip this table. An atrocity.
That Hard Target is also the one in New Orleans.
Yeah. His character's name is Boudreaux, so you've got a good.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the next movie. Kale, what do you got?
Okay, I've got 3 actors for you: Steven Seagal, Tommy Lee Jones, and Gary Busey.
Oh, Under Siege.
Under Siege.
Under Siege. Yes.
Under Siege I had that literally like on and off my list, like probably 4 different times. Kale.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I had this on my list and I said, I can't put it on my list because somebody else is going to have it, but also I watch it and I have such an animosity towards Steven Seagal anymore that I just can't stand him. And I couldn't do it. But go ahead, continue.
So back to Clint's point, right? Like knowing that he's kind of this fake tough guy in reality, removing that, when I saw this movie, right, in the late 90s, it's like this guy, Ryback, he's the cook.
Yeah.
Or that's what they think, right? But in reality, he's the most decorated, special forces person ever. He's just hitching a ride on the, the USS Missouri back to base, and of course, Tommy Lee Jones and Gary Busey take over and are stealing Tomahawk missiles. So this movie, it has the big, kind of the worldwide, hey, the whole world is kind of at stake here, right? These guys are stealing nukes or missiles, and they're going to sell them, and there's kind of one man army against everybody. And to me, as we get into my list here more, that's kind of a common theme, the one man army
Yeah.
piece.
Well,
But again,
like,
same thing. You've got the super tough guy who can take out everybody. You've got the love interest, the good looking girl who comes out of the cake.
yeah,
You've got
he finds his love interest jumping out of a cake.
Yep. You've got two super bad guys, right? Like who kind of have different skill sets.
Yep.
And then you have him kind of interacting right with the Pentagon, and it's, hey, how's Ryback gonna deal with this? Nope, we're gonna have to send in the jets to just take the whole thing. We're just gonna have to blow up the whole ship because there's no way Ryback can, sort of commandeer things back from these terrorists who have taken over the thing. So, this movie spoke to me, like I said, just kind of the one man against everybody, the unassuming cook, and Seagal. I mean, this is the coolest that Seagal's ever been, in my opinion.
I would fully agree. Like Under Siege is probably my favorite Seagal film of all time. The other thing too, I think in that time frame, what the early 90s, right? Had to have
92.
been,
I think
92. And
92.
so that was also like, who doesn't love big, awesome Navy ships, right? At that point, I mean, like that was just one of those. That's coming off like the tales of like Top Gun and some of those, right, Chad? Like where it's like, that adds in like that whole how cool is that aspect, So you get a little bit of that military-esque in there, but it's also just a straight up good old fashioned action film.
Yeah.
Yep.
And like to Kale's point, like if we didn't have this, if this wasn't on Kale's list, I would feel like I would have to eliminate something off my list to put this on here because it deserves to be on here. I mean, it really does. It is the epitome of what I'm looking for on my list or this list. It's just one of those things that like now seeing Steven Seagal, like it kind of just he's just so
he's
that
cringe.
guy.
In
He's
hindsight,
so cringy. Exactly.
He's certainly
Like,
no one's top 5 favorite action stars, looking back. But
at the
that
time,
movie was fantastic.
At the time, I feel like he probably was my top 5 favorite. I don't remember what the movie Hard to Kill, I think it was, where he had his ponytail and stuff. Like I remember how cool he was, and he did all the crazy hand stuff. Like he was at one point, but now it's just like, God, you're so cringy. You just went off the deep end.
I think he actually is he's a very decorated, like actual black belt in whatever
he's a 7th degree.
Whatever that
he's a 7th degree black belt in Aikido. But also like you've seen his video, like, come on, like, you've seen his videos where
I look at him like he forgot to turn off the action star acting gig in real life, right? I mean, like, I think he played in enough of these roles that he forgot he's just a real person, right? Like, and he just acted in real life too, I mean, I mean, we all know that he's kind of out of his mind, but his movies were, he's a key pinnacle action star of that time. I mean, he was at the top. So,
and I think the thing that really elevates this movie are the two bad guys, right? Tommy Lee Jones and Gary Busey as sort of the antagonists in this movie are fantastic. They are every bit as fantastic as Seagal is, playing Ryback. You've got, Stanix is the bad guy, and they have the big knife fight at the end. And it's, I think those guys do a lot of the heavy lifting in the movie too, which some of the movies that I'm sure we'll talk about, the bad guy, the antagonist is maybe not, is kind of an ancillary character. I think in this movie, those guys did a lot of heavy lifting, and I you were so scared of him, you hated him, right? You're going to come on this ship as some rock star, and you're going to take it over. I love those guys. I think they're an underrated part of this movie.
Here we are talking about how crazy, Steven Seagal is in today's world, and he was co-starring with Gary Busey. We're just going to let that slide then, right?
Yeah. But we talked about, like, Kale and I talked about that because I don't know when the last time you guys watched this was, but like Kale and I watched it last night, and Gary Busey, like, he is so not now Gary Busey, and whatever. Like, he's just like, he went off the deep end really bad. But like, honestly, what I took away from that one, like when Kale's talking about these villains, is, so first off, I feel like there's a common theme with all these where there's a pairing off of like the bad guys. So like when I'm looking at Double Impact, you had the Alex and Chad who had to go fight. They had to go fight the guy with the spurs on his feet. He wore spurs and he would slit your throat with the spurs, and he was doing that throughout the movie. So like you got this fast ninja guy doing that, and then we got the same guy from Bloodsport, Chong Li, who's out there, and he's got the scar, and he's fighting Chad, and he whoops him one time.
Did you just take over Kale's movie aspect and take it back to your movie that we already moved past?
kind of, but I'm saying that we're pairing up.
Like your time on Double Impact is over. Like, accept that and move on.
But what I'm saying is that they pair up the villains on this sort of thing, and they did that. They did that really well on Under Siege. And so like and again, so they had Tommy Lee Jones, and he was the BA from he was they knew each other, right? So they had this other alternate version of Steven Seagal, and how unhinged was Tommy Lee Jones. I found myself just completely engrossed in his character. Like as soon as they things started going wrong, and he's just losing it, and Tommy Lee Jones is a national treasure. And his acting,
I remember, John Norton and on his podcast, they covered a lot of these films, and if I recall, I may hopefully I'm not incorrect on this, but there was actually a alternate storyline written for that would show more background of him and Tommy Lee Jones that
really
they ended up cutting out or something, or there was some other detail. I'll have to go back and listen to John Norton's Boomcast for those of you that haven't listened to
Boomcast. Yes.
But yeah, there's a lot of detail that they dive heavy into this movie on all the little nuances that are playing in there. But there's something about those two characters that I think that it was written at one point that maybe would have taken you through some of that.
I could see that, because there's a point in there where they say that basically oh, haven't seen you in a while type of thing, and it's well, we haven't really discussed that at all, but apparently they know each other. That's what they kind of go with.
All right, I'm going to jump into my number 2 film here, or my second film.
Okay.
And Chad, you've already talked about it. You've already mentioned it. We don't got to spend a lot of time on it. It is one of the best action films of all time. But I mean, who didn't love the T-1000, right? And that was absolutely incredible. But Terminator 2, Judgment Day.
Okay. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I mean, it was just, I go back to, and here's what's funny, and I kind of fought myself a little bit while putting this on the list, because I'm not a huge Terminator fan. The actual series of all the movies, there's actually probably several of them that I haven't even watched, because it just, for whatever reason, I haven't been that entwined in that series. But this movie as a kid, and I think it's because of John Connor's character, just brought me into this film, because I probably was, what was this, 1991? I would have been close to John Connor's age, right? At least in my mind. And it was it was such an amazing film of again, putting yourself in that spot, right? Anyway,
yeah.
Terminator 2.
So Edward Furlong is the guy that played John Connor there, and I felt like constantly he was overacting on everything, right? But also he was so, I agree, he's so relatable, and he's can you imagine at the age? So this was released in 1991. So again, we're 8 years old, and you're watching this movie, and it's can you imagine if you had your own Terminator and you could just control this Terminator and that sort of thing? Yeah. So yeah, I mean this movie, honestly, Terminator 2 is probably the best action movie of the 80s or 90s. I'm going to say that pretty, put my stamp on it. For sure, I totally agree. It didn't fit my vibe. This is the only reason that I wouldn't put it there, but it was something you had to think about, because it is exact. There's a lot of that. You have a liquid T-1000, man.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. The T-1000 was incredible. And you want to talk about CGI, when he's shooting him with his shotgun, or actually, no, it was a grenade launcher, right? And it's just these holes that are getting blasted in him. I don't know, man. And when he's crawling up on the car, There was
Yeah.
just so many cool scenes that, and they
Yeah.
still hold up today. Like you can watch that movie,
I totally
and
agree.
it's still amazing.
I would wager that none of us have action figures from any of the movies that we're going to talk about tonight, other than that movie, which I had a lot of those.
I had those
Yeah.
absolutely. Kale, I'm interested on your
Yeah.
take on this. Like, where does this fall in your action movie genre?
So this is almost too good of a movie to fall into my action, movie
That's
list here, right? It's almost too good of a movie. Like you said, the special effects hold up, the storyline is fantastic, and what I was going to mention is, of all of the films we talk about, you've got some science fiction elements that might creep into some we talk about, but I think about a lot, right? That you look at the stock market or something where everybody's talking about AI this, AI that, and I use AI tools on a daily basis in my job, and I constantly think about Skynet, right? Like
yeah.
a day doesn't go by where I'm not thinking to myself, well, I've seen the Terminator movies, so I'm not sure about this. Should I be inputting this information and this thing's machine learning from me, giving it this information? It's gonna take my job or something. And so I think about the Terminator movies a lot. As far as lists go, like I said, maybe too good of a movie to have on my quintessential action movie list, but fantastic movie, fantastic, great voice, Clint.
That's I'm with you, Kale. That's the only reason it's not here, because it's transcendent. It's too good. It's like one of the best movies of all time. I gotta have a follow-up question with your comments that we're talking about that all the time. It's because I work in a ag tech thing where we use machine learning and that sort of thing. Have you ever said, okay, Skynet, or anything like that, kind of to somebody in a random business meeting or whatever?
Yeah, I've talked about Skynet in a professional setting and saying, I'm not sure. I don't know about this.
I agree. It's not probably the right time, but I cannot do it. Not do it, because it's like it just emanates from you. It's like I have to. It's like word vomit.
So before you go, Chad, kind of like we talked about, how did each of us make our lists? And I said T2 would have been something for me, except that it's too good of a movie, and that's. I removed a couple, and I'm just going to throw these out there. I removed Jurassic Park and Raiders of the Lost Ark from my list because I think they're too good of movies. They stand on their own. They're sort of outside just the pure action movie genre. But those would be on that list of what are the actual best movies, right? If I was going to rank them.
Those are, and I probably have some that like we'll get to a couple. I stuck fairly close to action, but those specifically, Jurassic Park and any of the Indiana Jones movies would be those are adventure movies, in my opinion, right? Like there's a bunch of action in the adventure, but it's truly an adventure film to me. And you could argue, I'm going to have some on here too that you can, no different like T2, you can argue that it's more of a sci-fi film than it is an action film, right?
Yep.
So I like that, Clint, that differentiating between action and kind of the action adventure. That's a good distinction.
Correct. And like Clint, to me, Clint's Terminator 2, like, I put some lists. I brought some like hardware out here, some actual DVDs and stuff like that. And Terminator 2 is one of the ones that I brought out here because it should be on this list, but I didn't put it on my list because it wasn't the vibe I was looking for. So like, again, it's like I wanted something that was a little bit not even B-rate. I wanted something that was more of that vibe, but it meets all the quotas because I mean, like we played Terminator, you know what I'm saying? We were the Terminator back in the day.
It has action figures, right? I mean, that's got to say something. So.
Exactly, and it's Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like he's like in a classic, iconic action hero. But yes, to go into my number four. My number four, and this is one that I feel like I could quote the entire movie from beginning to end. And I had this VHS, and you want to talk about like the ones that are worn out when you're pulling it in and out. Like this is one of those ones. Tango and Cash. Again,
yep.
Apparently, I grew up as the kid that really wanted to be like the prim and proper type of suit and tie, going to go out and kick some butts type of guy. You know what I mean? Because like, Chad was that guy in Double Impact, because I'm going back to that one again. Tango and Cash, I always saw myself as the Tango in this one, where he's like the businessman who's reading the stock market while he's in there, and then all like, and this movie, it hits on all those levels that we're talking about, where it's Kurt Russell, it's Sylvester Stallone. They get accused of a false whatever, and then they go to jail. They have to break out of jail. They're breaking jaws of a huge bad guy.
When they escape the jail or escape prison, isn't that the scene where he takes his belt and he puts the belt on the cable and rides it down like a zip line, right?
Yeah.
I thought like that takes me back, Chad, because that was like another one of those like childhood scenes where I'm like, that is so cool. Like I want to use my belt for that.
We could do that. We could do that.
At this age, I couldn't hold myself up on said belt. But you know what? I
totally agree. Especially that far, the rain and stuff. But that's exactly right. And like it has the same. I feel like this one might have introduced a little bit of like the Bad Boys thing, because there was that. They did a lot of things in there where they were like, okay, so we're gonna talk to each other, but we're basically distracting the bad guy so that we can mess him up. So like, you've got. Go ahead, Kale.
Well, so Chad, I'm gonna say though, here's the bone I would pick with this pick, and don't get me wrong, I love Kurt Russell.
Okay.
Love Sylvester Stallone, but to me, the kind of buddy cop opposite ends of the spectrum thing, which is what Tango and Cash was going for. Lethal Weapon. I mean, and that movie came before Tango and Cash, and Lethal Weapon was sort of the first time, at least to my knowledge, in the action genre, where they went that route of, hey, let's get the kind of unhinged narcotics guy posted with a family guy, and kind of they're both cops. Let's see what happens. And similar in Tango Cash, but I think Lethal Weapon was maybe 1986 or 1987 before Tango.
Is that when it came out?
So my only gripe with Tango and Cash is it the best of the, is Lethal Weapon better? I don't know.
So Lethal Weapon, again, I brought some physical content out here. Lethal Weapon is out there, but I agree. I do agree. And Lethal Weapon is one of those ones. I think Lethal Weapon 1 is the one that we should be talking about instead of Die Hard, as far as best Christmas movies type of thing. If you're talking about contradictory Christmas movies and stuff, because that one, like, I mean, they have a fight scene with Christmas trees in the background and whatnot, but like I think it was Jack Palance. Jack Palance in there, and he's like, what is it? He says something crazy like, yeah, Tango he waltzes in and takes my money, and he tangos back out and all this, and he just talks about these two cops, and they want to kill these two cops so bad, and yet Terry Hatcher, who I had a huge crush on. I mean, like, I don't know. I feel like I do agree with what you're saying, but I feel like it was different. There was a difference between Lethal Weapon and Tango and Cash, because Tango and Cash was two guys that were thrown together that didn't want to be together, which was same thing with Lethal Weapon. But you had Danny Glover in Lethal Weapon, who's like, yeah, I'm ready to retire, man. I'm just ready to be done.
I'm too old.
These two,
I'm too old for this.
I'm too old for this. Yeah, yeah. But with Tango and Cash, they were constantly like, I'm the best cop, and I'm the best cop, and like they were just like, they were rivals in a different type of way. And now they're thrown together, and they have this rivalry, but they're gonna team together and have that weird high five at the end. And they also had that crazy van, that super souped up van with the guns popping out and everybody. Yeah.
All right, Chad. Well, I can admit how I can see why you would like this, right? It's the one upping the next person, so that I can see how you fit.
Yeah. It just spoke to me more.
So here in the lieu of actors here, Kale, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump in and throw my third one out.
Yeah, do it.
So Sylvester Stallone, I got to put Sly on my list, right? This is in 1993, and the bad guy is Wesley Snipes.
Oh my God! Yeah,
Demolition Man.
Demolition Man. I love time travel movies. I almost put Time Cop on here. Like that's how, again, going back to like, Jean-Claude Van Damme and how much I love
Oh, you hurt me,
those
Clint.
kind of movies. But
You hurt me, Clint. I
I
I
love
thought
Time Cop.
I thought Time Cop would be on your list. That's the one that I was
Oh,
like,
yeah,
Time Cop's
no.
gonna be on Clint's list.
No, I can't put two like time travel movies here, but I look at Demolition Man. I can still watch that today. It has a bunch of fun lines. I think that as you look at the world today, it's hilarious to see some things that have actually probably come to fruition in this,
Yeah.
right? And it's just fun. It was I thought a unique storyline. And there's nothing more fun as a kid. I remember like watching them going through the museum, and it's like all this awesome firepower and everything, and then Wesley Snipes just kicks in the glass and just starts taking it all, right? And it's like this is so much fun. And I don't know, I loved that that whole movie. It was just I'll still watch it today.
It's hard to eat at Taco Bell without thinking about Demolition
That's
Man.
true.
Am I right?
Yeah, that's a fancy
Yeah.
restaurant.
And you know what's fun is you look at those movies, 30 years ago, where they're depicting what they think the future is like, or at least a Hollywood version of what they think the future is going to be like. And you've got Sandra Bullock's character, no harming people, and it's just, you're right, it is comical, and it holds up in a weird way to this day.
Yeah, one of the other things I remember about this movie of like that impacted me was when he's in the sewer, like the little sewer city, right? And he's going to eat a burger, and he's like, "Oh, I haven't had a burger in so long," and he's like eating this thing, and they're like, "Do you see any cows around here?" Right? And it's a rat burger.
Yeah.
I just found some of that just to be. I just thought they did such a fun job of like tying in these like little weird things throughout that entire movie that were I don't know, it was just kind of fun. So,
and it's really relevant with like our modern society right now. So like I made a joke with Kale a long time ago. We were having a game night or whatever, and I said that I'm going to try, because all these conspiracy theories and things that come out now. I'm like, I'm going to create a conspiracy theory that basically says that the whole world is based off of the movie Demolition Man and all that. And like because there are a lot of relevant things that come into this, and it's like it would make sense to have all that. So
I mean, like in my bathroom right now, I got the the three
seashells. Yeah, for sure. Dennis Leary was the guy there that had the rat burgers and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's right.
And
yeah.
also
the murder, death, kill.
Yeah,
murder, death, kill. Man, that movie is so good, so good. But also that allows me to cut off. We can cut out my number 2 because that was my number 2. So Clint put it like, well, you didn't force rank it, but I put it as my number 2. So yeah, for sure.
So I'm gonna step in here, and this, to me, I'm gonna say this is the most pure action movie ever made.
I can't wait to hear it.
Okay, so it's Arnold Schwarzenegger, who actually probably is my favorite action movie star. But I'm talking Commando.
Okay.
Oh yeah, is it Commando or Urban Commando? Or Urban Commando was
no,
that was Hulk Hogan, wasn't it?
Yeah.
This is just Commando, and so you have Arnold Schwarzenegger, who plays John Maddox or Matrix or something like that. He's the one-man army. He was part of an elite special forces unit. They're all kind of spread out, and they're being killed one by one. And he's got a daughter. He's out. He's a lumberjack.
No, he doesn't have a daughter. He has the daughter, Alyssa Milano.
Mm.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I didn't even think of that.
Alyssa Milano, 1985. This movie came out in 1985. I've had a huge crush on Alyssa Milano since Who's the Boss. So anyway, continue. Sorry.
But in any case, you've got the South American dictator who's, they're gonna they're doing stuff in South America. They're gonna sabotage the United States. There's all kinds of one-liners in this movie, right? This is the movie at the end where Arnold Schwarzenegger's character throws the pipe through the guy's chest into the steam pipe behind him and says, "Let off some steam." It's just
Bennett.
This movie
That's
is
like
Bennett.
a perfect
Bennett.
action
Bennett.
line right there.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you've got the flight attendant who's kind of the pseudo love interest, but also kind of the sidekick throughout the movie.
Yeah.
Nobody does more damage as sort of the one man army than Arnold Schwarzenegger in the movie Commando. I think it's so action packed. There's scenes in the jungle. There's scenes where he's out in Montana or wherever he is at the beginning. There's scenes in the city. I mean, it spans the globe. He's kicking ass everywhere he goes. I don't know how many people he kills in this movie, but it's a lot. So
The
anyway,
opening credits, he's literally carrying a tree on his shoulder.
correct.
He's literally carrying his tree on his shoulder. And then somebody tries to sneak up on him and you're like, you're too slow, whatever his name is or whatever. Like it is so cliche. It's so good. And he pushed, I think it was a Ford Bronco or whatever. He pushed it to get it up to like all. Do you remember like Clint? I feel like this might have resonated with you, where he breaks into the gun store and they steal like bazookas and all these crazy things, and he's cutting off
Things
the
that are
finger.
not at gun stores.
Yes, exactly. Just go shopping.
You really broke into a military surplus there, buddy.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't remember what kind of car they were driving, but he rips
That
the
little
seat
red
out.
car.
Yeah, the little red convertible where he rips the seat out so he could be less conspicuous. And then all of a sudden, she gets the Stockholm syndrome where she's going to like just help him find his daughter and all this stuff. Whoa, yeah, sorry. We're basically recreating this movie, but what was the? Please don't wake up my friend here. He's dead tired.
Dead tired.
Oh, yeah, that was on the airplane.
Yes.
When he knocks him out. Yeah. And then that whole scene is great when he knocks that guy out, and then he goes and just rips the wall of the airplane off and then crawls down and jumps into the bayou, It's like
everything
like
worked
he does
out
like a 300-foot dive into like 6 inches of water,
Everything's coming up Arnie in this film. So like sure.
So I mean, to me that movie was just like, this guy is so strong. He's so badass. Like I loved it. Not that you can even envision being like that, but you're like, man, that is so cool. I love that movie. That's the most quintessential action movie that I couldn't not have that on my list. So
yeah, I agree. And when Dino Andy Badina, he said he's like I'd just like to come down. We're gonna watch some 80 or some 90s action films and that sort of thing. That was the first one that I played for him because that is the quintessential one. You're right. That is absolutely true.
All right, Chad, what's your 3?
Okay, so number 2 is Demolition Man. So we're gonna skip past that one, but I'm gonna go to number 3. All right, so number 3 for me is another one. Again, these were very influential with me when I was a kid, and I felt like we just kind of like, I used to be Raphael when I was playing in the yard, that sort of thing, and but this one we did a lot of this too. Universal Soldier.
Oh,
okay,
yeah, there you go. Yeah,
and Universal Soldier is one of like the best. Like, I really like this. To me, is a good movie, and like a lot of these movies we're talking about here are not really great movies by today's standard. This one to me is a really good movie because you have like the war thing going on where he's basically there's the Vietnam conflict, and you've got opposite type of personalities. They're both killed. They come back and they are now these literal super soldiers, and and I can't. Nothing in my life, like if anything in the world is ever empty, I can't help but quote Dolph Lundgren when he's got his ear. Wasn't it ears for a necklace and like a rattlesnake thing hanging from it? It's like, it's empty. It's empty. It is such a minor thing. That is one of the best quotes in all of action movies. I love that scene. The rain, the mud, It's empty because he couldn't kill him. It's empty. I love that scene, man.
And
That
Chad, I think that's a great movie because that's one where at the end of the day, the bad guy is kind of stronger, and you're more scared of him.
Yes,
As badass as the protagonist is,
Jean-Claude Van Damme. Yeah,
you're scared that, hey, I don't think he can take Dolph Lundgren, right? He's bigger,
exactly.
he's more psychotic, so I that's a great movie.
that
Yeah.
I just had to look it up real quick, but yeah, 1992. So this fits like just right smack dab in all those good action movies right there.
Yep. And that's what I was trying to tell. What I was kind of alluding to at the beginning of this conversation, Clint, is that I definitely had a like genre in years,
Yeah.
and I couldn't avoid it. I couldn't avoid it because it's right. It's right. This was the genre for me. And so, like, yeah, 1992, I think all mine have been 1991, 1992, 93. It's just, that's where it is. You're 8,
When
9, 10 years old, and your mom lets you watch this type of thing. Like, you want to be Jean-Claude Van Damme. And also
I have to
I
say,
did want to,
I was
go
just
ahead.
I was just gonna say I was excited there when you were talking about that you used to play as Raphael, because I took that movie on and off my list a few times, and I thought you were gonna drop it. I thought you were gonna do it.
Can't do it. Can't do it. Can't do it because it's
Ah,
not the vibe. It's not the vibe, but
yeah,
it should be. It should be.
I took it off my list. It was on there, but of course we're
Yeah.
talking about the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie from
Yeah.
1990.
Yeah.
But yeah, you built me up there for a minute, but Universal Soldier is a way better pick for this list. So
Yeah, I agree. And like I said, it just everything about it fits. And here's the issue that I had was like I tried to, I want to kind of hit on like our top favorite action stars at the end of this conversation. Um and so I wanted to say like I'm just going to do one from each of these. So like I'm not going to do Jean-Claude Van Damme. I'm not going to do Double Impact. Then I'm going to do Hard Target. I'm not going to do I'm not going to double up here. But also in the same sense,
you
it's like
actually
I
tripled up.
rationalize. What's that?
You actually tripled up.
I didn't triple up. I got
I
Double
mean,
Impact.
double impact with 2 Jean-Claude Van Dammes and Universal
right.
Soldier of Jean-Claude Van Damme. You tripled up.
Yeah. But here's the thing. To me, I rationalize this as, and I'm gonna bring this back up in a little bit too. But I rationalize this one as Universal Soldier is a Dolph Lundgren film.
Oh,
so I'm
okay.
putting Dolph
All right.
Lundgren onto
I
my
like that
list
take.
here.
I like that take.
Yeah.
It's a good take.
Yeah, you gotta have like that. He's one of those guys like he doesn't have a ton other than like Rocky 4 and Universal Soldier. So
And that's why I'm glad Clint got Wesley Snipes. Even though he was the bad guy, I'm glad you got him into this list.
Yes, correct. Yeah, Wesley Snipes should be on this list.
Yeah, he was almost on my list twice, but not quite. So,
Passenger 57.
no,
to it?
no, more on the Marvel side.
Always bet on black. That's the only thing I remember from that one. Is always bet on black. Passenger 57.
Yeah, no, I was looking at Blade pretty hard. Blade was pretty influential, and that sword that he had was absolutely amazing. But all right, Kale, what is your next movie?
Okay, this one does blur the lines, and I felt I almost took this one off because this is not a pure action, but I just love this movie way too much. True Lies.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I struggled because it's a comedy, right? In a lot of respects, right? This is Tom Arnold's best work, which I don't know if that's saying much.
I like the way you lead with this is Tom Arnold's best work, which it is.
Tom Arnold is fantastic in this movie, right? Jamie Lee Curtis as the sort of bored housewife of Arnold Schwarzenegger's character in True Lies, Harry Tasker. He's unbeknownst to his wife, right? He's this kind of secret agent type. She's bored in their marriage. He's always gone. He's always traveling. But you've got Bill Paxton, which plays the sleazy car salesman who's trying to get with Jamie Lee Curtis the entire time. You've got Tia Carrera as the art kind of broker person who's, she's hot. It's great. There's some fight scenes between her and Jamie Lee Curtis. You've got the terrorist plot that Arnold is trying to thwart, but then you've got the kind of pretend terrorist plot that he's trying to play with his wife so he can spice up his marriage because he thinks his wife is bored and cheating on him, which she kind of is. But this movie is it's hilarious because it's meant to be an action comedy, and it executes well because the action elements in this movie are actually fantastic.
For sure.
I love True Lies. It's one of my favorite all-time movies, irrespective of genre. So I had to put it on my list, even though it doesn't quite fit the narrative of kind of the pure action movie, which is what I set out to do.
I'm actually happy you did deviate a little bit away from that, because this definitely has a lot of comedy, built into it, and the action aspect is probably more of the side story, right? As opposed to like the comedy aspect. But I like your take on this, because you deviated away from like what you were talking about before. I like it. I like this change.
Yeah. And I appreciate you saying that, Kale, and Clint to lead into that. But I think my list is done now, because this is my number one.
Oh,
number one.
Wow.
Number one for me is True Lies. And so, Clint, that I've had the conversations about how Jamie Lee Curtis, in my opinion, I'm like she's still kind of hot. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know how old Jamie Lee Curtis is right now, but I feel like that movie, she was just incredible in that one, because she plays this, like you said, like this housewife type of thing. And then she comes out of her shell and makes this incredible, I don't know, Jamie Lee Curtis really killed this role. Okay.
Wasn't there a scene with her that was kind of a throwback to the Sharon Stone scene, right?
Yeah.
So Arnold's character convinces her to take part in, hey, you're part of this now too. You need to go up to the hotel room and kind of seduce this guy and plant a tracking device.
That's right.
Device.
Yeah.
And so you've got Arnold sitting in the chair with a voice, modulation.
French guy, yeah.
And the, dance and stuff. And she does this very sexy dance in lingerie. And it's amazing. It's such a good movie.
And I would never talk about something but that was a pretty hot dance. And she all of a sudden it's like, wow, wait a minute, who's Jamie Lee Curtis? You know what I'm saying? Like literally that was my thoughts. Who is Jamie Lee Curtis? Because she immediately, it's like, okay, she's on my radar right now. She was incredible there. And I feel like she stole the show. Go ahead.
Yeah, so, she plays the bored kind of housewife. She's totally covered in, the dress with the buttons all the way to the top and the short haircut, and you're kind of like, okay, whatever. You've got Arnold. This seems like a weird couple because Arnold Schwarzenegger is, 6'2" and totally jacked, but we're supposed to believe that he's this nerdy insurance salesman or whatever it is that his cover is.
She's bored with him because he's just,
it's like, he's so plain. And then she's the sexiest person alive somehow in this dance scene.
Yeah.
And yeah,
the scene where she's outside the door and she's wearing that stupid dress, and all of a sudden she just rips this part off here, and throws water from the vase into her hair, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, wait a minute. It reminds me of She's All That or whatever that movie is, where it's like you take off your glasses and all of a sudden you're hot. You know what I'm saying? So, it's stupid.
So I got to jump in here. This isn't about True Lies, but it's about what you just stated, Chad, about your list. Mm-hmm. So we have ate up your number one and your number two here, but your number one being True Lies. I literally came into today knowing for a fact that you were putting Predator as your number one movie, and I cannot believe that Predator is not your number one movie.
No, it should be, man. I mean, it should be, but the
this
thing
blows my mind.
But it for some reason it wasn't a part of. I guess my action film thing is more of a street level type of action film thoughts, where that is more of you're fighting a monster, which I agree. Again,
that's definitely
so that would go. It would go into the Terminator type of thing. It's like you're fighting the man versus the not self or not whatever, what I'm saying. You're fighting the doesn't matter. the Predator. You're fighting an
Right.
alien, and
Yeah.
that didn't fit my vibe. So I agree. That should have been because you
Yeah,
got Jesse Ventura.
I would have bet a decent amount of money that you were putting Predator on your list. I would have bet that it was number one, but I can't believe that it didn't even make the cut. So
Some sort of
my next movie.
yeah.
So I'm going on to. I've started early. I went to 1998 or 1988 was my earliest, and I went on up. So now I'm at 1995.
Whew,
Now, Kale,
95.
this actually breaks one of your rules that you stated at the very beginning because it does land in the espionage. And I went full on James Bond with one of my favorite James Bond films and video games
GoldenEye.
of all time, which is GoldenEye with Pierce Brosnan and Sean Bean. That literally, again, the number of times that I've watched that movie, the number of hours that I spent playing that game on Nintendo 64, I had to put it on my list. It's just one of my favorite all-time action films, and I know it's the espionage aspect, but I got to go with it.
Clint, that's a great call out though. Like that really is like that is on brand for you. For the amount of times that you've just absolutely destroyed me in GoldenEye. You know what I mean? Like it is like one of my goals in life is to watch all of the James Bond movies, and I know that was a big thing for your family and stuff. So,
Yep.
Yeah, that is on brand. That makes sense. I totally get it. Totally get it.
And that's where like that's the interesting part when you look at James Bond movies, right? When we did get into like the 80s and 90s James Bond, they turned to more action flicks, right? Even
Mm-hmm.
Timothy Dalton, who I dislike as James Bond, but if you look like License to Kill and some of those, they kind of transitioned into that more action-based flick, right? And they carried that on with Pierce Brosnan's character in GoldenEye. Man, Tomorrow Never Dies, I think is another one, and I can't remember the last one. But and now we've the world is not enough. Yep, and we've got to the point now that these films are no longer action films. These things are like full on like. It goes back to like the Marvel conversation, right? They're a little bit of everything mixed into these movies. But I look at GoldenEye, it's still back in the day where I feel like they did a pure on great action film, and it had all the gadgets, it had everything. It was the first time that we were meeting Pierce Brosnan as 007. That's what I consider he's my James Bond, that's the one that got introduced in my childhood. So anyway, GoldenEye, that's it.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense for me, for you. Like that is a on brand Clint type of recommendation, and I wouldn't put that on your list, but I'm glad that it's on your list. So like, go ahead, Kale. You got something to add to that?
I specifically removed those because I am a huge James Bond fan. Seen every movie multiple times.
Really?
So GoldenEye, great movie, great action movie. Like you said, this is sort of when the action element was at its peak.
Yep.
So I love the pick, Clint. And you're right, the video game. We've all seen the TikTok of the guy who came up with the, the waiting theme song of and he's just like, it's just, fantastic movie, good pick, love it.
Yeah, and without the video game, we don't have. I mean, the kids today don't realize it, but we don't have Call of Duties, we don't have Battlefields, we don't have any of those video games without GoldenEye. So,
yeah, I totally agree with that, Clint. But also, like, I feel like that, like that movie is a basis for a lot more. Like, so I was watching Christopher Nolan's. The Dream Within a Dream. Inception. All right. So when they got to the snow level of the dream, right? Did it not seem a level in GoldenEye? Like, I mean, I was completely unable to like watch that movie at that point. With like thinking like, this is a GoldenEye scene. Like, this is a GoldenEye level. That's what it was, like, for sure. And like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just thinking of snow and GoldenEye or
no. It
synonymous.
It definitely feels like the James Bond-esque scene that they were like imagining at that point in time. Yeah, for sure.
Right, for sure. And like, again, I'm glad that this is part of your list. So good for you. Good for you, Clint.
All right, we're coming on the tail end here. Are we at Kale's number one?
Yes.
How about, I know that I just said a movie, but I'd like to save your movie for the last movie. And I
That's
don't think
fair.
we're going to talk about mine for very, very long. We already know that Chad's is True Lies here. I'm
Yep.
going to go. You all good with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. 1999. I had a few that I continued to remove. I had like Face Off on here at one point in time because I
Based
absolutely love
off,
that. The
man.
Rock was on here at one point in time.
Can I guess?
But
Kale
I
wants to
ended
guess.
on, what was that?
Hang on. Kale wants to guess.
Is it The Matrix?
It's The Matrix. Yeah. Yeah, it is. And again, I go back to, and I know that this is the exact same place that Terminator 2 sits. It's one of the best movies, like action movies of all times. I mean, this changed the way that action movies started being made into the 2000s. But the reason why I selected it a little later in my life, I was probably, 16, 17 when this thing came out. It changed the way that I watched films. Like, there was so much involved in that movie. The storyline was so in depth, which I know like that takes away from the action side, but the action in this movie is absolutely insane. And I didn't want to put it on here for a lot of those reasons. And I had it removed multiple times, and I finally just put it back on there because it's literally just one of my favorite films. And it's amazing. So that's it.
Nope. You're right. It's almost removed from the 80s and 90s action genre because you're right. That is what kicked off sort of the transition away from, okay, kind of the mindless action hero flick where you could kind of pay attention, kind of not, but the action sequences are cool. But I mean, The Matrix was fantastic. The story, I mean, it made you think, right? It's the kind of the birth of the internet age, and are we living in a simulation or not? And it just,
Are we?
This is still relevant today.
Are we
still hearing that? Yeah. Exactly what I'm saying. Yeah. No, I that's a good call out. And again, I think that like I think it's too good and too transcendent of a film. I think you did reference for it to be on my list anyway. I think you mentioned The Rock.
Yeah.
And like The Rock is one that I struggled with. But again, I didn't feel like Nicolas Cage or Sean Connery were Jean-Claude Van Damme or Dolph Lundgren or Arnold Schwarzenegger type of characters. That's the reason I didn't put it on there. But like, again, if we were to put them in a void, that movie would be like in my top 5, probably of the 90s in general, because man, like
I honestly, I thought that you could have put Con Air on your list. And I know you're a big Nick Cage guy, and that's a pretty good fun action
Nick
film.
Cage. Well, so here's what I love about the fact The Rock is the fact that I'm a huge Nick Cage fan, and I'm also a big Sean Connery fan. But Nick Cage is such a like beta type of person there, where he's like, oh, I can't do this, and he's like, I'll try my best. Your best. Losers always complain about the best. Like I love that movie so much. When I
think we should put a rule that you should never do a Sean Connery accent ever again.
This is like the third time that I've done a Sean Connery accent on this podcast, and it's never gotten any better.
Exact same thing every time.
Yeah, every time, and I'm always gonna try it, man.
Kale, you're gonna add something.
Well, I think I have a major oversight, and the mention of Sean Connery makes me realize that I forgot Highlander. Although the fantasy element of it, but Highlander is
it won an award for the best movie ever.
Yeah, it's among my favorite movies. But big oversight on my end to kind of not include that, just because I would have loved to have talked about it. But
no, are you a big Highlander fan?
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
You literally fit the stereotype of action movies. Like it just keeps getting deeper with you, Kale. It's like every cut that we make is just like there's a deeper action movie that we didn't. I'm surprised you didn't throw out like Last Action Hero or something, So,
oh, great movie. Escape from New York.
Movie.
Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
But in any case, with that, I struggled because I was finding myself kind of too many Arnold movies, and so I was really wanting to put Total Recall on my list. Love that movie.
Great one.
One of my first forays into the real kind of the science fiction element. I loved, kind of the on Mars, also the memory altering thing. Am I who I think I am? And is it dream? Are my dreams real? All things that I thought about as a kid. But for my last movie, I sort of moved away from you've got the most masculine, pumped up, this is the most badass person ever who none of us could do the things he's doing, to kind of the John Everyman. And that's with the movie Die Hard.
Oh,
yeah.
You've got John McClane, who's, he's not special, right? He's not,
nope.
He's sort of thrust into this position, right? He's not the most well-trained badass guy who's Mr. Olympia. He's just kind of a normal guy cop who's got a divorced wife and that kind of thing. And for me, what this movie did and why it has to be on the list is, think of how many times in your life you've heard a movie described as, well, it's Die Hard, but on a train. Well, it's Die Hard, but in an airplane. Oh, it's Die Hard, but it's like, you can't talk about action movies without saying Die Hard. And so this is one that wasn't necessarily one of my favorite movies growing up or anything like that. I just think you can't talk about action movies without talking about Die Hard. A very bad guy, Hans Gruber. Just, his
Alan
accent,
Rickman.
you don't like him. You're totally on John McClane's side throughout this entire film. Everything that happens. So anyway, I had to put Die Hard on my list. Like I said, there are movies that I probably like more, but this movie to me kind of helped spawn several other movies that are fantastic. So I needed to put Die Hard on my list.
Do you know what I love about Die Hard, of what emotion that it drags out of me when I watch that film?
What?
Is when they remove his shoes and he's barefoot. And it is a phobia of mine. And any like horror film that you end up watching, I think like shoes are like one of the most important things for a human because like your feet are just like so brittle, right? And there was another movie, like, man, was it a Hugh Jackman movie or something, that like shoes, there was like an apocalyptic movie and shoes were like the number one thing traded. And it's like, I would be that guy trading shoes, because you watch movies like Die Hard and he's like walking across that broken glass. And if you've just ever cut your foot, it just doesn't heal very fast. It hurts like that whole scene just bothers me. I don't know. It pulls out an emotion that makes it real, in my opinion.
Yep. Plenty of automatic weapons too, which is a plus. So great movie.
Yeah, you're right on that too, Clint, because that's one of those things that like when they say, I mean, shoot out the glass or whatever to make him walk across it. Like they find out that he's barefoot and make him and it's like, no, I don't feel like anybody's going to ever think of that in a crisis situation like that. Bad guy or not. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, that's the worst thing you could do to him, because that's terrible. I mean, like,
and you're on to something, Clint, about, you picking up on that, because to me, that's why this is such a good movie, because unlike Commando or something where you see Arnold Schwarzenegger putting 3 bazookas on his back, putting 17 grenades into his pockets, however many pistols and MP5s and whatever else, and walking in and killing 300 guys. It's like, well, which I could not do. I'm not him, right? I couldn't even carry that amount of weaponry. But it's like this John McClane guy, he kind of has your vulnerabilities. He's not perfect. So,
now I got a machine gun, or whatever that quote is. Whatever that quote is. Yeah, it absolutely. And again, this is one that I put on my list of like, it should be on there. Yeah, for totally agree. Was Mr. Winslow, was he the cop in this one?
I don't think so.
Was it it was a Die Hard that he was in there? I just don't remember which one it was.
Well, actually,
no, Mr. Winslow was he was the guy on the outside.
The second one, it's like Samuel L. Jackson as the taxi driver, right? So you're right.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, Samuel L. Jackson was the one. Like,
is that Die Hard 3, or is that 2?
Die Hard 2 was the one.
Die Hard with a. Is it 3. Die Hard with a Vengeance?
That's the one at the airport.
Yeah, you're right. Die Hard 2 was at the
That's-
airport. Die Hard
That's
3
we're talking
then
three.
with
Yeah.
three is the
That
one with
was
Sam
with Samuel L.
Jackson,
Jackson,
and the
yeah.
tunnel and the
and
bank job and all that.
Yep.
And four was honestly one of the I don't remember what it was called, but that was one with Justin Long, and that was an incredible movie. Like that was
kind
a
of a
great movie.
cybersecurity thing, right? And it's his son.
Yeah, Timothy Olyphant,
Yep.
Justin Long. I can't remember what it's called, but like that was a great one.
All right, so here's what I'd like to do to round this out. So we went through a lot of movies that we all put together.
Yes.
We didn't have a whole lot of overlaps. We had a couple, but that's about it. But who did we?
Yeah, you guys eliminated my 1 and 2, but whatever.
Who did we not mention though? Because I didn't hear a single Chuck Norris film. Right, like no Chuck Norris, and we're sitting here talking about action.
Chuck Norris.
Like who else?
Well, Jason Statham came a little later, right, with like the Transporter and some of those movies. He's not on here. Did we have a Kurt Russell as the leading guy? Well, Tango and Cash, I guess.
Tango and Cash. What?
Yeah, I'd say he's leader in character.
Mel Gibson, if you think about like him and like his Mad Maxes, and we talked about Lethal Weapons, right? Like didn't have any Mel Gibson action films.
Nope.
We had a couple that were, a couple big action stars we probably left off the old list.
Yeah, I think there were a lot of ones that we could have added in there. We talked about Predator, that sort of thing. We talked about Face Off, The Rock. Those ones all
one of the rare
should have been on somebody's list. What's that?
We're probably remiss, given that it's 2024, to not have a strong female lead, right? Aliens, Sigourney Weaver, probably a miss.
Well, Alien, I put in the
but
horror
that's so
category.
Sci-fi. Yeah, it's so sci-fi, so horror. It may not be an action movie, but
yeah, I mean, like I could probably put Alien or Aliens in like a top 20 movie of all time.
Yeah,
but like
too good of a
I
movie.
don't feel like it's gonna fit this category.
Too good of a movie.
Too good of a movie, and it's person versus the aliens or whatever, So it's not the vibe that I'm looking for.
And there's two movies that, I mean, for my childhood, you guys are right. I'm a little bit younger than you, but Men in Black and Independence Day. So those are two that are big, but I kind of removed those as sort of a disaster movie, or again, too good of movies to be an action movie.
Here's what's funny. I had both of those on. They are two of my favorite films. I absolutely love Will Smith back in the day. Like I absolutely loved every role he was in. I even watched like Wild West, right? Which is a terrible movie, but I love watching it, But Independence Day, I had on this list, and then I just realized it's just not an action film.
Yeah, it's too good.
Like, and there's just the action that's there. I want that hand-to-hand combat, or I want a gunfight or something, and it's more like, I don't. It's not really that.
And the same with Men in Black, right? The action is kind of ancillary to the story.
Yeah, it's secondary to the comedy and to things of that nature that kind of rolled in with Men in Black, right? But that's where I struggled putting those two on the list. But it's just hilarious you said that, because I had them on my list at one point in time. So
it's weird, and I don't want to keep going on this, but one of the things that I considered on this was talking about Steven Seagal. I remember my uncle telling me, "Have you ever seen him kick someone?" He did it Under Siege a few times, but like he was the fastest hands in the wet or the whatever. So like, or the fastest hands in the East. That was his whole thing. Like he was so, but he never really kicked anybody. He never did anything. So like that was kind of like what I based my thing off. You got to kick somebody. You got to do a roundhouse kick or some sort of flying stupid kick or something stupid like that.
A roundhouse, and we didn't put Chuck Norris on this list. The roundhouse.
I know.
Kick.
I agree. I expected Kale to do that. That was his job. He failed on that one.
Yeah, Red Dawn, could have put that in here. That was a good one.
Oh, Red Dawn's in. Yeah, that's another good one.
But good story. Too good of a story.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. This has been a great conversation. Kale, thank you for bringing your professional opinion and insights into the action movie world. Thank you for bringing that onto our podcast, man.
Yeah, no problem. And if anybody out there watching has an action movie that we didn't talk about it, bring it up. Maybe I haven't seen it. I doubt it, but I'd love to watch and talk to you about it. So
I love the casual arrogance on that one. Maybe I haven't seen it, but probably not. You know. But again,
Suddenly,
I think I don't.
Suddenly, Chad and I want to just start throwing titles at him just to see.
Yeah. I think we're at the point where we can't really talk about action movies without bringing Kale into this conversation
That's
anymore.
true.
And he will be our action movie aficionado from here on out.
Love it.
sounds
Well,
good,
hey,
guys. Thank
with
you
that-
for having me.
Stamp it.
All right. With that, the credits are rolling.
Lights are coming on.
That's the end of the show.